All right, y'all, so let's just walk through the final project. Make sure you have a basic understanding of what it is and what the components of it are. I have due dates listed here. These may get shifted back a little bit depending on where we are. So don't stress out about that. I'll make sure that you have a good knowledge base before you're expected to turn those in. So the first thing I want to show you is just the general layout or explanation of the project. So if you go into your syllabus, you can see here final project. So I'm just going to click on that. So if you read through this on your own time, but there's a couple things that are key to understanding this project. One of them is this 2 or more standards. You're going to use a Common Core standard and then a North Carolina standard to do this project. Some students do one Common Core and one North Carolina standard for all of their activities. So essentially you would be incorporating those 2 standards into each activity. Some students decide to do a different pair of standards for each activity. Either way is fine. You just have to make sure you're using a Common Core and a North Carolina for every activity. Try to make it cross-disciplinary. Don't use the 7th grade math standard on fractions from Common Core and the 7th grade math standard for fractions on North Carolina. Use one that is about critical thinking in media and one that is about math so that it's cross-disciplinary. So that's an important point to make. I would like to see that these activities are cross-disciplinary and that it's clear you are meeting the standards from North Carolina and from Common Core in every activity. Okay, so that's an important component. What is the final project? The final project is a website that houses 4 activities that you create. The 4 activities are media literacy, learning technology, a technology of your choice, and a video hook. I'm going to walk through what each of these are, but I'm going to use a few sample websites. I want to show you how to find these on your own. If you go to As You Learn, and you go down here to Section 8, the final project, you'll see some sample student websites. If you click on that, I've already got it open here, but yeah, we'll just reload it. You'll find websites that were built for this class. All right, so let's head back over to the syllabus real quick. We'll start with the media literacy activity. So the media literacy activity is consuming a piece of media and then asking students to produce something after. So this one in particular is a 2-part activity. The others are not necessarily 2 pieces like this, so that's important to note. All of the activities require some higher order thinking questions, teacher notes, and hypothetical answers to those questions. So essentially what you're making is an activity that, pretend that a teacher in California comes across your website and what they should find is a fully developed activity that they could follow along with. So what they're looking at on your website is the teacher edition of that activity. They're looking at teacher notes to see how am I going to set up the groups for this activity, what kind of materials do I need, how long is it going to take, and what questions and discussions should I have with my students in response to this project. So what you're setting up is not what the students would be looking at, but what the teacher would be looking at. Okay, so let's start by looking at the media literacy project. I'm going to show you on a sample website. Let's look at Kayla's media literacy. Hers is really interesting. Okay, so first I just want to show you a little bit around her site. So Kayla focused on technology in biology. Her home page is also her about page. She's made that work really nicely in a design that I find easy to navigate, and I don't mind that she's combined the two because it makes sense. She still has a blurb about what this website is for, how it fits into this class. A lot of students just copy something from the syllabus, and I'm fine with that if you want to explain why you're doing this website somewhere on the website. That is a component that you need to have as well. Okay, so let's go to her media literacy activity. So, Kayla has students watching a piece of media that is not designed for education. That's the component that all the media literacy activities are based on. They are consuming a piece of media not designed for education and thinking critically about it. So, she's got them watching the trailer for the video game Fallout 4. At the end, she is asking them questions about the biological environment that is set up in Fallout 4. What had to happen in our environment to get it to this point, essentially. So it gets students thinking about the interconnectedness of habitats. So the response activity here is to have students draw a mutant and its environment as if it were a character in Fallout 4. So what students have to actually do to get to this point is consider what's different in the environment. They have to consider how creatures might adapt to a changing environment. So it's actually a very higher order thinking creative activity that gets students to think in an abstract way and in a creative way about habitats and environment. So really interesting media literacy activity. She has highlighted a specific objective here, but if you look back at her homepage, you can see that it's actually meeting the standard. The point one is talking about the specific standard, and then you can tell that she's using a particular objective of that standard within that activity. And then she's also meeting her Common Core standard, which is in literacy. Integrate and evaluate multiple sources of information in diverse format and media. So you can tell she met both of those standards really well inside of that media literacy activity. Okay, so the second activity that you're going to be doing is a learning technology. You're allowed to use whatever learning technology you would like. You could use Kahoot or Interactive Whiteboard, which is Smartboard. You would need to download the program Notebook. There's a free 30-day trial of that, so I would wait until it's time to do the learning activity if you would like to do a Smartboard activity, so then you have enough time to work on it. You could use an educational app about math or Khan Academy or any technology that is designed for learning in that activity. These students specifically did, most of them did interactive whiteboards. Actually, Kayla did not. She used Bioman. So that is a website that you can set up different habitats and walk through like what would happen if a river gets polluted, and then it follows through with all of the different outcomes. It's sort of a gaming way of looking at environments. That was a really interesting use of a learning technology. I'll show you another one. I believe that Olivia did a Kahoot activity. Yeah, so she did a Kahoot activity for elementary ed, I believe, just talking about fractions. So it'd be a fun way to start off a class. So that's a good learning technology that might be interesting for you. Okay, so the third component, let's go back to our syllabus here, is a technology of your choice. So after you've had a chance to explore some learning technologies, I want you to think about how you could apply a technology that is not designed for learning into a classroom. And you've probably seen this done before. You can have students go around and take photographs of art concepts in the environment around them. Like if you're doing an art lesson on rhythm and repetition and scale and perspective or those kind of things, you could have students walk around and find examples of that. You could find fractions in nature and do the same thing using cameras. You could do something with videos where students have to reenact in a modern day a historical event, but pretend like it's happening in their high school. Or I had one group of students do a Twitter feed of the women's suffrage movement. That was really fascinating. They had to consider what they decided to become one woman and decide what kind of person she would be and what she might tweet about at the time, her current events. That was a really fun one. The fourth activity is a video hook activity. I would suggest that you check out, let's see, some interesting ones here. Michael Countryman has a really interesting video hook. What you're trying to do is you have to make a video yourself, and what you want to do is engage your class in the topic. What you're trying to do is just hook them, get them interested, and then the follow-up to this would be the actual lecture or information on this subject that's presented in your video hook. So that's what we mean by a video hook. It's a video that hooks your students. Okay, so those are the 4 components. Sorry, let me go back to the syllabus here. And then all of those, like you saw, live inside of your website. So you can see how the points are delegated if you look on the syllabus here. You will turn in the URL also to your TK20 portfolio. I'll show you how to do that at the end of the semester. It's really just copying and pasting the URL address of your website. This just kind of walks through all of the components, like this is what you need. This is the website map. The only thing that's really different here is this mobile learning is a technology of your choice. So it could be mobile, but it doesn't have to be. It could be a camera, which I suppose is mobile, right? Learning technology does not have to be a notebook, but if you are doing a smartboard, you need to embed the file. If you're not doing smartboard, you need to have a link to whatever program you're using. For example, if you're designing a lesson to be used with Kahoot, at least link to the Kahoot website so that we know where to find this learning technology. Video or photo is the video hook. In the media literacy, make sure you have that production response element that's not in the other ones. All of these have a title, standards, clear teacher notes, higher order thinking questions, and a clear explanation and visual examples. Visual examples is something that people sometimes fall short on, but it is a really important component to explaining your lesson. Make sure you're making your website engaging and clear through not just text, not just the content, but also visuals that support and explain further what you're trying to do. References. Some students approach this as a separate page where they just have links to every image they've used, every video they've used, in sort of a bibliography style page. Some students put references on each page. Either way is fine with me, but you will lose points on your project if references are not included somewhere. Alright, so that is essentially an introduction to the project and all of its components.